Welcome to Being Anxiety Free. My name is Emma Upton and I'm here to spill all the tea on what it means to be able to choose to be anxiety free. Without anxiety, we know who we're here to be and what we're here to do, and then the unique coding locked inside our DNA, the magic of all of that gets to flow through. So, join me and let's dive into today's episode. Cheers. Episode 31, I want to talk about unkind, overthinking, overcomplicating minds, and what would be the simple antidote to realizing that your brain is a menace that wants to be unkind to you pretty much all of the time. Any thought that you have, any theory that you bring up, you feel like you've got it wrong, you feel like your brain is always on you being like, well, that's not good enough, or they're not gonna like that, that's not gonna, like, that part of us, you'll have to excuse me, I feel cold. Our instinct, the most obvious thing to do, the most human thing to do, is to believe that, is to go with it. And when we blindly just fall into the patterns of believing whatever we think, which is, it feels like obvious, it feels like maths, it's 2 + 2 = 4, but what if it doesn't? And then maybe I've lost you at that point, but what if we don't need to so absolutely just go with our first thought or go with our thoughts? What if, like, I have this curious energy to everything in my life now? Before, I was always looking for absolutes. I think that's very typical of the human condition. We just want absolute answers. Absolute answers, which don't actually exist, but to us, absolute answers mean that the world makes more sense. We're on a spinning sphere in the universe, as we know, where we've got no idea where it's going to end. That's not comfortable for humans. Like, if we explore too far into that, we lose our minds. We're always looking to ground ourselves in right now, being like, well, this makes sense. The brain is conditioned. And the way that I always explain it is that if you're in a car and when you go into neutral and you just kind of coast along, the brain is always wanting to just slip it into neutral and just coast along. It thinks that just falling into typical patterns and behaviours that are familiar to us is that neutral space and we can just coast along. It's always looking to do that. So when we have a thought, when we're going through life in this one particular, and these things are coming up for us and we're just believing what our brain is telling us, we feel like we're in neutral, and if it's neutral, it's simpler and then life feels good. But what we get to explore is this idea of, like, maybe it's not so right. Maybe the things that we think and the things that we believe aren't so absolute. Maybe you have a brain that's as nuts as mine. And maybe that's been a lot. I always remember watching an interview with Cher, and she was being interviewed and somebody was like, what's the biggest challenge you have in your life? And she's like, my brain. And she's like, and what's the biggest gift that you have? And she's like, my brain. And that's essentially it. She's figured it out. She's figured out that the gift of what we are already exists. The gift, and it doesn't exist in the brain. It lives at a deeper space, but it's hard to articulate that in human words so that we all get it. The essence of what we are already exists, but we have a brain that I think is like a gatekeeper. It's a code blocker. So we have the codes of our existence. They already exist. You already know who you're here to be, what you're here to do. There is a body of work within you. And that doesn't necessarily mean like a tangible business idea. It can be anything. It can be interpreted in any way. Creative, arts, as a system, as a business, like whatever it is, there is something unique and brilliant that's tucked away inside you. And the only way it gets to be fully formed and those codes of the existent come out and it gets to be this flow is as and when we recognize that our brain is code blocking it. There are things that we're like, no, because we're always looking to get to neutral, to get back to what is familiar and what we know. But what if we accepted that our brain doesn't know what's best? I literally play this game with myself to the point of, if I can consciously think it and I feel the energy around it being like, does it feel light? Does it feel exciting? I'm going to explore it. Or does it feel heavy? And if it's down here and it feels heavy and it feels like something I need to figure out, it's like, oh, I'm in my conscious brain. And that means that I'm probably not heading in the direction that's going to be most helpful for me. My brain is so insistent that it's right. It is so insistent that the thoughts that it is having are absolute and something that I need to follow. And they're so off the wall. Some of the things that I think, I say them out loud now, because before they'd just be swirling around and I'd be taking it all so serious and absolutely be like, oh my God, what's wrong with me? Like now I say it out loud and I laugh to myself. I'm like, what? How is that even a thing? But it's just a moment. I don't need to take that moment so absolute and seriously. But it's a lot, and it's loud, and it's intense, and it's extreme, and it hyper focuses on things and goes around and around them. Like, it's a lot. But for me to actualize who I'm here to be, for you to actualize, if you can identify and you've got a brain that is a lot, it's always on, it's always thinking, it's always feeling like you've done something wrong, or you've got like, if you have a brain of that intensity too, you're here for something big. And if you'd have told me that a couple of years ago, I'd have freaked out and been like, oh my God, no, I'm barely keeping it all together. Don't put anything else on my plate. But through the evolution of learning how to do this, awakening that inner power, we create capacity of like, oh my God, I can hold so much. All of the stuff that my brain was just whirling around was a waste of my energy. I am here for more. I am here for something so much bigger than me. I am here for something huge. I can hold so much. I am so powerful. We get to that powerful state of knowing, oh my God, I'm going to fulfill my destiny. Oh my God, I'm going to live out what I'm here to, what I've been put on this bizarre spinning sphere. I'm going to live that out. I'm literally going to tap out of this existence knowing what I was placed here to do, and I'm going to fulfill it. Like that knowing, that deep knowing inside being like, I don't get it. It doesn't make sense. I don't know tangibly what it's going to look like, but it's happening. I'm already doing it. I know it's going to unfold as it's meant to. That inner knowing of absoluteness that you don't need to tell anybody. Like, I'm not out here convincing them, like, I know my purpose, I know my destiny, I've awoken the inner power within, like, it feels like it's easy, which is nuts. There are new quantum shifts, there are new paradigms that I need to readjust and rebalance on, and I'm still a human having this human experience, but I know absolutely, like, that power comes from having a brain that is nuts, and everything in your humanness wants to follow it down those roots of the crazy thoughts and the crazy ideas and the crazy notions. Like, it wants to, all of me wants to go back to my life before I started this enterprise and found myself in this madness, which I love. The human part of me is like, oh, it'd be so much easier if we just sat on the sofa chilling in the evening, not getting up at 5 a.m, not creating this out, not spending a whole year of my life and tens of thousands of pounds, like creating my book, creating my life's work. Like, wouldn't it be simpler? Like, yes, I can feel myself being pulled towards that. But what gives us this power of knowing absolutely this is my destiny, this is what I'm born to do, this is what I'm meant to do, and I don't care what anybody says or has to say about it, I know so absolutely, and there's nothing or nobody that's going to stop me. That level of conviction comes from noticing what the brain wants to do and choosing to awaken that inner power around it, being like, I'm so powerful, I'm not going to listen anymore. I'm not going to fall down that path. I'm not going to falter and stumble and believe it and come back to this space of that's unserving me over and over again. It's not that the brain gets nuts, although I think this would be I wish I'd had a brain scan. I was saying this to my friends when we went away at the weekend for our Christmas shindig. I wish I had a scan of my brain at the beginning of this journey and one now, because I imagine the neurology of my brain looks very, very different. But I'm still very much human, duh. So this resistance is human, natural human resistance that we all feel to going after our dreams, to going after our purpose, to putting ourselves out there, to stretching ourselves beyond our capacity right now. There is resistance in me at every stage, but the thing that allows that power, that awakening to happen at such depth is because I absolutely have learned how to take back my inner power and awaken it around these concepts and be like, no, I'm not falling into those patterns and into those habits and going down those spaces and places that you're telling me to, brain. Like, no, I choose out of it. I choose not to, even though everything in me tells me that it's going to be more comfortable, over and over and over again, until you create new neurological patterns. All that's happening, and when I reduced it down to this, I felt so much better. All that's happening is something is happening in the world which triggers a thought inside your brain. A thought being, it sparks a nerve which communicates with another nerve, and it's been there for a while. It's like a pathway. It's been traveled so many times. It just links, and then it links somewhere else. Those things together create a chemical response inside the body. Like, oh, I'm going to respond to this like it's really happening, even though it's just a thought. Most of the time, it's unnecessary. We don't need all the adrenaline and cortisol. Like, no, there's no bears trying to kill us. But the brain's telling us it is, so it creates this chemical response. And then the brain goes, and this is what it means, because I feel safer if I stamp something absolute around it. And we go round and around and around this thought cycle. What awakening does is it interrupts that thought cycle and goes like, is that necessary? Is it life and death? Are you going to lose everything if you just give it a bit of a shot? Do you have to just jump so oppositely from one thing to another, or is it just a little few steps that you get to take right now that's going to add up to that, and then it'll feel really like, what is it? What is my brain telling me? And is it as true as it's making out? 99.9% reoccurring. It's not. And I've learned to be able to see that distance. The triggered toad is the work. Trigger-free Tuesday is the work around increasing that distance so that you can see the space between the stimulant and the response. When you're seeing that space, you're interrupting the brain neurology, and it gives you space to choose something different. My inner power, the strength of my inner power, which I'm so proud of, because I am a different person from 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I'm unrecognizable, and I'm so proud of what I've done, and it's all because of how nuts my brain is and continues to try and be. But I choose not to listen to it anymore, and I quite often do something in the absolute opposite direction of it. So if you have a brain that is as nuts as mine, and you feel like it's your curse, you're like, oh my God, I know what I want to do, but I just can't. There's something that's awaken that inner power around those spaces and places, and you will come to a point, maybe you'll already experience it, but it exists on different levels of, oh my God, I am so powerful. My brain is so strong and so dominating and so overthinking and so unkind to me. And I've learned to not listen to it. You feel like a superhero. You feel next levels of power. When you create your life's work, your business from that space, I have no fear for you. It is a guarantee. And the world will be like, you can't guarantee it. My husband's always saying to me, like, how can you guarantee, Emma? Like, how do you know? But that's a logical human brain. When you've experienced it at the depth of you, it's like, you know, it's a deep knowing. You don't know when, you don't know how, but you know it's absolute. Like, that feeling can only be ascertained when we learn to not take everything that the brain is doing. Now Wednesday is Wake Up Wednesday, waking up, that awakening that inner power. And the character that I use to gain perspective on the unkindness of the brain. So the Bob monkey is the overthinking part, that's Monkey Mondays. But Frances is on Wednesdays. She's unkind and judgmental about everything about us. When we learn her game, we come ever closer to who we truly are, what we're truly here to do. And then a unique body of work gets to flow through. So wear your pinks today. Be on the lookout for Frances and the judgments and the unkindness, and check in with yourself. Do I need to believe that so absolutely? And if the brain's really loud and be like, yes, I really need to. When you choose out of that, you awaken an inner power that's incomprehensible. The louder your brain is, the more powerful you are, and you're here for a bigger purpose than you and I could ever comprehend. And that's a really exciting thing, even though there's a part of you like, oh God, yes, but it's an evolution. So go out, wake up to the magic of everything that your brain already is. Nice job.